What is the most used man-made material on Earth? You guessed right, it's concrete. Look around. It's everywhere. Sidewalks, driveways, foundations, floors you stand on, and even entire buildings are made out of concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we will explore one concrete-related topic with the help from industry professionals that are shaping the future of the trade. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even some proponents of competing materials about their views of concrete and their vision of its future. Yeah. And welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today I have John Belkowitz with Intelligent Concrete, a returning guest. Thank you, John. Appreciate you coming on the show. And I promised you can do your thing. So let's do it.
I've got my email on the bottom.
Yeah.
Started doing that. So if folks have a question, feel free to shoot me an email. But Seth, thanks for having me on the show. This podcast this morning, the birth of it was from an email blast that you sent out. And for the listeners out there, if you're not part of the Concrete Logic email blast, well, that's your first wrong decision this morning. The great thing about it is you can quickly use the eraser, flip it back over, put the pencil back down, and correct that mistake. Do you have a link to your email blast?
We got the website, concretelogicpodcast.com, and there's a sign up there. So I got an email blast from you, Seth, about patents. Do you mind filling your listeners in on what that email blast was about? Oh, yeah. So last week when I released an episode, I just shared a story of someone reaching out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, you may have had a guest on your show that may be, violating a patent of someone. And I shared with my newsletter group that at first I was very concerned. And so I asked who it was, who the guest was that allegedly was violating this patent, and that person responded. And then I quickly found out that that particular patent violator had not been on my podcast, but it got me thinking about patents and our industry, and if patents are really are they beneficial for the industry? Meaning, if someone has a patent on something and they have ownership of a process or a product for a long period of time, and no one else has. Oh, look, we got a guest with us. If someone has that process or product locked up for a long time, is that beneficial for the industry? So my thought is no, I don't think it is. I think sharing of information and of new products and things like that are beneficial not only for our industry, but I think society across the board. I think sharing of successes and things that work, that make things better, I think are good for everyone. And I think patents kind of, not purposely, I don't think, may make it harder for folks to share, that those type of things. Again, before we hit record, John, I said that newsletter blast that I send out when I release an episode, it's just things that are gnawing at me, and I put out there, right or wrong, I put it out there, and you respond to it, and that's why you're here today.
Yeah, and if anything, my response to it lets you know that people are looking. at your email blasts, that we're not using them to prop open doors. Not that we can do that with an email blast, but it's not going directly to my junk bin. People are actually reading your stuff. You're having an impact on the industry. So good job. Keep it up. The patents make it harder to share things in the industry. I want to highlight that one, and I made sure to write it down. Before we get into the nitty gritty, do you mind if I give an intro to your listeners?
Yeah, go ahead. Your floor.
Thank you. The reasons why I want to give an intro, it's, I like the idea, the question that you asked, are patents hindering concrete forward thinking? And you're assuming something really, really big here, that the industry even understands what patents are and sees it yet. I don't think the majority, the 80% of the folks who make concrete every day know this patent issue. It's that Paul Blart. You see Paul Blart with Kevin James?
The mall cop.
Yeah, he's a mall cop. And the lady with the red hair says something like, how does it feel being a mall cop? And Paul Blart's like, there's a big thing in the industry now about mall cop versus mall security officer. I would get it if you'd understand, but it's huge. It's huge. I don't think the 80% of the industry that makes things happen, that gets the residential concrete out the door, the commercial concrete out the door, I don't think they give a shit about this. I think they're continuing making concrete. They're getting the great concrete down the chute into the formwork. God bless them. But there is the 20% of the industry that makes decisions that affects the 80%, because, of course, with Pareto's law, 80% of our problems come from 20% of our decision makers in the industry, and that's who we're talking about. Those people need to understand why it is going to hinder forwardness. It is going to do everything that you think. And the unfortunate reality is we don't live in that hippie world that you live in, where we could share things and be all lovey-free. Like, we don't do that. This is a capitalist world that we live in. We want to have recognition for our ideas, and there's a system in place that governs that. A very good-ish system in place, but, hey, man, you're right. It is going to hinder, but it is what it is. What do they say to my 2-year-old? You get what you get, and you don't get upset. Isn't she adorable?
Yeah.
And when she hears that, she turns into the meanest little kid in the world. You don't know. It's too bad. So what I wanted to do is, first, why do I get to talk about this? So the biggest reason that I get to talk about this is I understand patent law for the very reason that we don't get to freely share everything. And it's called missed opportunities. I started getting deep into patent law when the major company that got me into the concrete industry started taking my ideas and they started calling it their own. Now, man, that has happened to me too many times that I want to talk about. My father, if you want to have my dad on to talk about how many times we've had ideas taken from us. I remember being on a phone call, and Whitney and I have always had this type of desk. Whitney's desk is right here. My desk is right here. I got that from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Loved that movie as a kid, and I always loved that desk setup. And I was on the phone with one of our clients, and we didn't have this intellectual property contract set up. And I am literally giving them an idea. And Whitney's looking at me like, dude, what are you doing? Like, they need to pay for that. Like, we need to, have protection. I'm like, Whitney, they're going to pay. Don't worry about it. They're not going to screw us over. What I mean by that is they're not going to take the idea and claim it as their own. And the unfortunate reality is that it happens. Saturday Night Live, which has nothing to do with concrete, but that's the greatest example of having ideas taken and claimed by other people. And I can't remember who was given the interview, whether it's Pete Davidson, but as a young entrepreneur in the comedy industry, the music industry, and the concrete industry, there's something to be said for know-how and creativeness in a very commodity, rigid environment. When you come up with a good idea that not only disrupts, but makes the industry a whole bunch of shekels or cheddar, kesev or dinero, pesos, whatever, the increment is, you want protection over that. So missed opportunities. The reason why I get to talk about this, I have somewhere around 15 missed opportunities. The last 5 missed opportunities, my dad has been the one who has pushed and said, you need to hire an attorney and they need to fight this. And so we had this major technology. This is the oops story as part of my notes. A major technology that I designed for a new and upcoming sector in the construction industry. And I was hired as a consultant. We created 3 ideas that were specifically going to be patented. And then other ideas that was never the discussion. I remember being part of the team and saying, hey, we need to patent these as soon as possible. No, we don't have the resources for that. And as soon as I left the company, I think it was like that summer. I mean, Your Alarm Today, by the way, was Sister Christian, the song. I thought that was, great song. So we lost the opportunity to get this type of technology patented, which meant hundreds of millions of dollars. And I remember I spoke to my attorney and I said, dude, I thought you did the paperwork, man. Excuse my language. I thought you did the paperwork. And he said, and I'm quoting him verbatim, he said, it took him like 2 or 3 hours to say it, but he went, oops. So patents, the reason why people get patents is to protect their ideas. There's a financial portion of it. There's an ego portion of it. There's I'm putting something on the wall. It's recognition, it's money, and it's intellectual property. And it's hard to create things, man. And I'll get around to that, but there's a certain expertise you have to have in the industry where you've been doing something so long, you've invested so much time, whether it's the practical or the academic side, that you create something. And now you have a certain expertise that blood, sweat, tears, however you want to define those resources. I firmly believe in patent law and the idea of U.S. and global patents to protect intellectual property. And yes, it hinders, it gets annoying, but too bad, man. It literally, if somebody came out with the Concrete Podcast 2 tomorrow, right? Used your entire webpage, right? They say good artists create, great artists steal. So if somebody came out tomorrow with the Concrete Logic 2 and they took your logo and turned it red or pink or green, and they used all your words on an AI system, you would be, I know you show no emotion and, you have a duck's back and you're Mary Poppins of dealing with that stuff, but there might be a little piece of you who's like, screw you, man. I came up with that, right? That's calling stealing of your intellectual ideas. So I've been part of that. I've missed those opportunities, and the new attorney that we have now, the reason why we have him is because of one of the missed opportunities. And out of 6 lawyers that I interviewed to fight for me to get my patent back, because we just found another patent that my idea, I even sent them the patent abstract. And a 7-people team were used on that patent. Not one of them was me. One of them was the administrative assistant. Like, I remember when I came up with that idea sitting on a toilet. Like, it's to protect your ideas. And whether or not it hinders the industry, it vilifies, it validates the purpose of us protecting the brilliance of this great nation. We don't want people to be afraid that their ideas are going to be stolen. Now, as it turns out, right now in the industry, people don't respect patents. The email that you received, somebody obviously didn't do their homework. They reacted emotionally when they sent that to you, right? And you who said, hey, this is hindering the industry, is it beneficial? Logic is the reasonable approach to a subject based on a series of practices, actions, or events. Now, when we say anything with the hedge phrase of concrete on it, it changes that word, right? Hedge phrases like chemistry assumes a certain stoichiometric balance of an equation. If we look at one of the many allotropes of carbon, diamond, CO2, carbon nanotube, graphene, it has a certain chemical structure. It has a certain chemical side of the equal equation. We can get there from A to B. That 2-year-old. Don't be sorry. Say hi.
Say hello.
Hi.
Oh, come on. And then she turns into an octopus when you try to pick her up. A wet noodle.
Yeah.
When we say concrete logic, when you say cement chemistry, you don't say CO2. It's not perfectly stoichiometric. I remember when I was doing my master's, one of the first questions was, what is CSH? Because when you ask a chemist, when you have CSH, that's carbon, sulfur, and hydrogen, not calcium silicate hydrate. So as concrete people, as cement chemists, we have our own language. And the same thing, so cement chemistry is different from chemistry. When it comes to concrete logic, that's different than standard logic, right?
Yeah.
There's a practical side of it that most industries ignore. Most industries are run by spreadsheets. You can do that with most industries. It's called, top-down management. In the concrete industry, if you do that top-down management, you're going to end up having rats in the back of your ready-mix truck. There's going to be contamination issues. We have to do a bottom-up. We have to have this practical use of the term logic for concrete. It's a concrete logic. So with that being said, I'm a student of patent law and patent history. I've got 2 patents to my name. We have 6, somewhere around 6, maybe a little bit more than that are pending right now. So obviously I believe in patents, and I've had 15 that I had to give up or were taken from me. Mm-hmm. I've defined, so I went through this portion. Any questions before I go into what is a patent and what are the steps to getting a patent?
I was going to ask you about your experience with patents. Now, when you shared that you've defended patents before, correct?
That was one of our first soirees into the legal side of it, where we were on a team that was trying to get a U.S. patent that had already been awarded revoked. And that felt like I was, a SEAL team. It was just arbitrage. It was research. It was day and night. It was fights. It was like Legally Blonde with Reese Witherspoon is what it was. No, it wasn't like I've been all through that part of it. I'm not a patent attorney, obviously, but that's something, I just filled out my second application for another PhD in civil engineering. And after I do the PhD, obviously I'm going to take a break, but I want to follow that up with a degree in law. And then I want to go after patent law, which is a very small subset of law. You can't just write a patent. You can write a patent, but you have to be a very specific type of attorney, a patent attorney, to do patent law. Right. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just I know someone that has a patent, I was talking to them about their product and their personal experience with. So they had a patent filed, and a international company saw that they were trying to sell their business, and their business came with this patent, and this international company had a very similar product that they said they had a patent over. And if you can imagine, this is just one guy. He's got he doesn't have unlimited resources, and then this big larger international company with unlimited resources compared to this guy, as far as lawyers and money and all that. So they basically told him that if you try to sell this company, we're going to come after you for violating our patent. And he was just kind of like, what do I do? I'm just a guy. They came up with the thing, and I'm just selling it. And so now he's kind of caught. He can't go anywhere because this company's threatened to, basically destroy everything that he's created, but in the legal way of things. So that story happened recently, last year or so. So that kind of was in my head when I wrote that newsletter. Is like, these guys, I totally get it. I'm not saying I don't believe in patents. I'm just saying that I know it takes a large effort to get the patent filed. It takes the patent to get approved and all that good stuff. I just don't know if our system, as far as protecting folks with the patent, how well that is, as far as, to me, it sounds like maybe the lawyers are the ones that benefit from the patents and not necessarily the guy that filed the patent after the end of the day. That's one thought I have. Another thought is when one person or one company has a patent on something, I think that they don't have they have a definitive amount of resources to get that product out to the industry. And that's my other thought was if there was a way to, and you probably know this better than I do, to share that technology in some kind of way where you still protect that person and their idea, but it gets out there and it's sold or advertised throughout the industry, so it spreads and makes the entire industry better, not just a small group that knows of that technology. That's what I was trying to get at, John, and probably didn't say it in a very intelligent way. But that's kind of the background of that newsletter too. So
sure. So I wrote down what I thought were the important things that you said. The first thing you said was, "I know a guy," right? And he's a little guy. He's the David, and there's a Goliath.
Yep. And
patent law is draconian. It doesn't care about that. So you got to take that, "I know a guy," especially if that guy is a buddy of yours, out. Mm-hmm. There are rules set up, and it's how you use the rules. It doesn't matter that the Goliath has unlimited resources. No, they don't. They have a legal department. And that legal department is made up of 3 to 4 lawyers and maybe 2 to 3, maybe a little bit more paralegals. Especially nowadays, they might even third party that out. And what they're going to do is they're going to send your buddy a cease and desist letter, and he has 30 to 60 days to respond. His attorney, he's not going to respond. He has an insurance company, or he has an attorney that he's hired to, one, write the patent, and then, yes, get paid, not just to write the patent, but also get paid to defend it. Because a patent doesn't mean anything. A patent is a fucking, gosh, I'm so sorry. A patent is a freaking painting on the wall. It's an "I love me" statement. It's what you do with that patent that matters. And the patent is your shield of armor that protects your brilliance, right? There's a book that I read to my kids called "What Do You Do with an Idea?" And by the end of the book, I'm freaking crying every time. I know we're supposed to be tough as guys, but that's what we're talking about here. If your buddy whether friend or not, if we're going to put the emotion back into this, because I said we have to be draconian about this because that's what U.S. patent law is. It's rules, and those rules are held to the letter, no matter the freaking size of the attorneys or the team. It's black and white ink. And if we want to put the emotion back into it, if your buddy went out there with a shitty suit of armor, then he's got to blame his attorney. And I can say that confidently because that happened to me. A multi-million-dollar deal. And my dad said, dude, you got to fight this. You got to fight this, man. Like, this is bullshit. If this was the 80s, we would have hired some Russian guy and they would have knocked this guy's kneecaps out. You can't do that anymore. Can't do that. So you got to fight them with attorneys, right? That's my idea, and you're stealing it. You're stealing it. You know how hard I worked for that? My kid was being born, and I was working on this. No, that's not true. But, that's putting the emotion back into it. And when I had to do the same thing, somebody had did exactly what happened to your buddy. And I don't know if that's the story you're bringing up, but I interviewed 6 attorneys. 5 of them said, we're not going to fight this for you. The last one who I ended up hiring said, oh, hell yeah, I'll fight this for you. I said, really? Like that? Like, it was a glimmer of hope. I felt like I was watching a Disney movie for the first time, and it's like, I had that feeling. He's like, oh yeah, dude, it's going to cost you about $1 million. I'm going to send you a bill every 2 weeks. And he goes, you're going to lose. It's going to cost them $3,000 to get past your $1 million complaint. He goes, I'll fight it for you all day long if that helps you feel better. I was like, man, what can I do better? This is for your listeners. This is for your buddies. This is even for those multi-billion-dollar corporations that are fighting your buddy. Get a better attorney. And what I mean by that is most of the legal staff in those big corporations, the Goliaths, they're schmucks. They don't know what they're doing. This is new to the concrete industry. The concrete industry in this sense is like Eastern Europe, right? And what I mean by that, if you go to Eastern Europe, certain parts of Europe right now, it's like going back to the early 80s or the late 80s here in the States. Like they're still listening to Milli Vanilli. Blame it on the rain. And that's the concrete industry. We're 10, 15, 20 years behind what's going on right now in other industries. So we don't really understand patents and why they're so important, this conversation. So our system does protect. Our system changed as of March 2013 for patent law. Before patent law, we had something in our system that was designed to protect those who invent. So if somebody had an invention, it was stolen from them, and they can prove that they designed it first, that U.S. patent can be overturned. It was called first to invent. That changed as of March 2013 to the more global method, which is first to the office. So even if you have proof that you designed something, if you're going to sit on in hands, or if you're like, you know what, I'm not going to get into this patent game, because I've been on that too. I've advised people to get patents, and they're like, John, this is the concrete industry. We don't do that. I'm like, okay, somebody's going to, and then you're going to say, what the F? Why did I get a patent? And by the way, a provisional patent is around $2,500, and I'll explain that here in a second. But our system is set up to protect the concept for 20 years. Doesn't care who brings it in at this point or when. You just got to do it by the law, and then, of course, they're going to get into their shtick. But you said maybe the language or the lawyer, it's set up to be more beneficial for the lawyers than it is for the industry. And you know what, man? You're right. Lawyers make $575 an hour when it comes to this type of work. And it takes anywhere from 20 to 200 hours to write a good patent. So you're talking 15,000, 20,000, maybe more, 25,000 to get a good patent, right? And that's not even your time. And talking to attorneys, they ask the same question like 30, 40 times. And that's when you really want to hire a Russian guy to bang their freaking toes out, Just like, I've already answered that question, dude. But they need the answer in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're going to make money, but you shouldn't get a patent unless you either, one, feel that strongly that this is your idea and you want to protect it, and of course, attorneys hate or, let's just say or, there's a potential to make a lot of money. Right? When I got my first patent, I didn't do it to make a lot of money. I never thought there was a market in it. I did it to just protect my idea because I could see somebody taking my idea, which folks had already done. And this one I had sacrificed a lot of our kids' lives. Like, instead of being with them on the weekends, I was doing work in the lab. Instead of sleeping at the house, I was sleeping in the lab. There was a lot of work that I had done that there was a lot of sacrifice for. So I wanted to make sure that it was protected, for at least 20 years. And plus, I wanted to hand the baton off to my kids. There's something about getting a U.S. patent. Right? It's like completing a college degree. There are certain degrees that are meaningless, but if you've got something that you really believe in, that pedigree, that stamp from the USPTO, from the university, I don't know, it's something you put on the wall and you're proud of. So if one company has the patent, does it control all? This is not Lord of the Rings. All right? Like, there's not one ring that controls all rings. And that is the biggest scare in the industry. Like, oh, this guy has a patent or this company has a patent. We're not going to be able to do anything. Has that ever stifled Americans, or has that pushed Americans to do bigger and better things, more entrepreneurial things? You want to tell me that I can only use a technology one way? Oh, hell no. I mean, shit, how many examples? Let's expand it to North America. There used to be a grease made from the rapeseed plant, right? Now it's called canola oil, which stands for Canada oil, right? There are so many different ways of using a product. As long as the way you use the technology or the way that you create the technology is an obvious innovation of an existing technology, or it's not an obvious innovation, you have a patentable idea. So if you see a way to take a bull float, a screed, I don't care what it is. I met a guy years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that took a mag float and he wired it up to a bull float stick, right? And the way it moved, I have pictures of it. It was freaking brilliant. And it wasn't on any shelf. Again, it wasn't a bull float. It was a mag float. So it had the size, it had the shape. And man, when he couldn't get to hard to reach spots because, he had a handicap with, one of his legs. So he used, I was like, dude, you got to fucking patent that. So he's like, no, I don't need to do that. Now it's sold by 3 or 4 different companies. Mm-hmm. Lost opportunity. So, there are how many different versions of the bull float? You got bull float with vibrators. You got bull floats with weights on them. There isn't one way of doing things. There's not one way of using technology. So to say, how is this shared? Man, even if there is what seems like one way of using something, right now, that doesn't mean that the future is going to unfold many different ways. Like, who the hell thought that we could use liquid nitrogen in concrete or on aggregates? Like, when you were going through school, did that even occur to you? Or could we print concrete on the moon or on Mars? And you can't just do it like we do here, where you go outside or make concrete, not even print concrete. You can't just go outside because water, it's very special that water exists as a liquid here. It doesn't exist as a liquid on the moon or on Mars unless there are very special circumstances set up. Mm-hmm. And those circumstances are specific to ideas that don't exist right now. The materials are obvious. The techniques are obvious, but the innovation, how do we do this? It needs to be created by something. So yes, there are patents out there right now that limit, that hinder, that do everything that you said. You're not wrong. You're a very smart man, and you made very studious connecting the dots, right? But I don't think that's going to hinder the industry. I think that's going to piss somebody off. And there's two ways to get people involved, Seth. This is very important for your listeners. One of my mentors, I hope to call him a mentor, his name is Larry Sutter, doctor, engineer, ASTM guru, once told me, John, there's two ways of getting people involved. You either get them beer and pizza, or you get them pissed off. And I think, that email that you got is indicative of two things. One, the industry doesn't understand patents and why they're important. We've already discussed that. And two, the industry is about to see a major shift when it comes to intellectual property. Because we have been for too long of the mindset that, we should all share, and it's the big companies that have been gobbling up the patents. Now, it's people like you and me that come up with the ideas, who work every day, who understand the science to a certain degree, the mechanics, people like Matt that can create things that'll help the industry either make money or make the job a little bit easier. Because the reality is, we're not only going through a change and shift in materials, there's been a mass exodus of the people that trained you and trained me. Construction is still going to go on, right? Mm-hmm. So to meet that demand, if we don't have what Mike Rowe said as those 25 to 55-year-olds that wanted to get to the trade schools, if that generation, if those people, they don't exist anymore, and we see a major decline, there's going to be a whole bunch of things invented, created to help meet the demand. Tomorrowland is what I see in the next 5 years. And hey, not just the equipment, but the materials, the processes, anything that helps change the industry, and it's your idea, it should be protected. You look at Apple. Apple has patents on their boxes, the way they ship materials. And there's a lot of ideas there that have been patented. So, okay. So what is a patent? I think I answered that, but I want to make sure I answered your question. Have I answered if one company has the patent, will they have control over everything?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you hit a very good point, though, and my thought was the opposite. I didn't realize that the patent game or the intellectual property is new to concrete. I was thinking the reverse. I thought that's been around for a while. So maybe flipping that on its head and saying maybe that is what's going to push us forward is more interest into that side of things.
Roman concrete has been around for a really...
You had to bring that up.
Well, I do, because it pisses me off that U.S. taxpayer dollars is paying for that research. Mm-hmm. That pisses me. And patents, U.S. patents. And the universities that spend that money, that U.S. taxpayer dollar on Roman concrete patents or patents they should be ashamed of themselves, but hey, we have a draconian system that allows them to do that. But again, it's U.S. taxpayers paying for the research, bullshit research, and then U.S. taxpayers paying for the patent that then belongs to an individual. That's a topic for another discussion.
Yeah.
But I really believe that what Intelligent Concrete is, so these other companies that are getting pissed off, they're the Taylor Swifts of the music industry. When Taylor Swift, and what I mean by that is whether it was Taylor Swift, Michael Jackson, Paul McCartney, when they started demanding ownership of their, I can't remember the term, but their initial recordings, there's a term for it. The industry kind of like, what? What do you mean? No. You're supposed to make money off of your tour dates, and you can make a small portion, but we're doing all the work. Not the artist. And I mean, you saw a big emergence of this intellectual property when it came to art. When what were those things? Not Bitcoins, but what were those things called? You know what I mean? The electronic things that are being sold.
Oh, the NFTs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, who gives a shit about electronic art? Right? Well, but there's a lot of money going back and forth. That's why I give a shit about it. And people created these things, and like, I only paid $10, and now somebody's getting $2 million for it. Where's my money? Mm-hmm. So the concrete industry, it's been around. Patent law has been around forever, but it happens to be that the concrete industry got into a late game, and they're like, their head is being spun around, especially big companies. Big companies, now that little folks are trying to or are getting control of their intellectual property instead of just, you know, I don't want to say the gross term that we normally say, you know, getting screwed over. There's a nastier way of saying that, but that's Finland. So why get a patent? You protect what you have created, whether it took a long amount of time or lightning struck your brain and you figured it out. You paid for that in some way. You should have protection over that. Can I go into what are the steps for a patent?
Yeah, no, this is all good.
So there are different types of patents. There are provisional patents, there are full patents, there are pending patents, and then there are awarded patents. And for my patent attorneys there that are punching the freaking screen right now, I'm trying to make it simple. A provisional patent gives you a stake in the ground that, hey, here's my idea. I came up with it. I'm filing something with the U.S. Patent Office, and it could be one paragraph. It could be 2 sentences, right? Provisional patent should cost you around $1,500 to $3,000, $3,500, so $2,500, right? And what it does, it puts a stake in the ground. It gives you 1 year to finish your idea, right? But at the very least, you have some protection as you try to get this concept into the industry. Especially with our industry, I can come up with something amazing in the lab, but if I want to get it out to the industry, if I want to sell something, I have to do work, not in the lab, but in the field. Mm-hmm. So if I do work in the field, you know, it's like that Family Guy with the Batman episode. Like with Stewie's talking to Batman, he's like, Bruce, how didn't you know that people were going to talk about it? You had a huge cave with all this electronics that people are building in the middle of nowhere. Come on, man. They were going to talk about it, right? Like, so the contractors were going to talk about it. So people who work with you to dial in a technology, to bring a technology from the lab to the field. You know, we have Bookcrete, Labcrete, Realcrete. To get to this part, to get to the real Crete, to start selling the product, you need people. It's like getting a mortgage in New Jersey. The more people you get involved, the more assholes you're going to deal with, more likely your idea could be stolen, right? Mm-hmm. So you get a provisional patent to help protect, stake in the ground, and then give you time to work your idea out. We literally just went from provisional patent to full patent for one of our ideas yesterday. It was a big thing for our company internally.
Nice.
Thank you. So once you go from provisional patent to full patent, it cuts off. You can't make any changes, or it's very hard to make changes. Out in Europe, for a global patent, I believe it's 3 years that you can't make any changes, right? That it's in the provisional stage, you can't make any changes, and then it goes to the full patent. Like, it's really weird and it's annoying. But once it goes into the patent pending, once you've submitted your patent, that's where the U.S. Patent Office is going to start looking at other patents to see if there's any of that obvious innovation of an existing technology. Are you doing something that has already been done in any form, fashion, or another? And this is something that should have been done by your attorneys, your patent attorney. You don't want, personally, I don't like to read patents unless it's part of a legal thing. Like, we're working on a team. I don't want to steal anybody's ideas. I have attorneys that take my idea and see whether or not there's something similar. They send me those patents and I tell them whether or not they're similar or not. Right? Because you can fill out a patent, you can hire somebody to fill a patent and submit a patent, but if the USPTO finds out that, hey, you're an obvious innovation, your patent's going nowhere, which is great. That was originally why I did my patent. I didn't care if the U.S. Patent Office, was going to say no. I was kind of banking on the fact that they were going to say no, because I didn't want to defend a patent at the time. It's expensive to defend a patent. Once you get the patent, it's nothing to get a patent. It's keeping it alive. It's, hiring the attorneys to defend it. You spend $5.75 an hour. So you better have a damn good reason to have a patent. It better not be because I want something on the wall. But once you go through that patent pending process, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of upkeep to make sure that you're answering the questions, getting the figures right. When we submitted our patent yesterday, we didn't have all the figures that look pretty. So we're going to have to pay a draftsman to make them look like the USPTO wants them to, but we just didn't want to prioritize that for the time. And it's not a hard thing to do. After your patent pending process, which can take months to years, that's when you get a patent awarded. And, you can get it. So this one, my patent is on aluminum modified colloidal silica particles, for cementitious products containing and methods used thereof. So my patent is on something very specific. It's a type of nanosilica that has a very type of aluminum modification to it for a very specific concrete chemical and physical attack, alkali silica reactivity. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be that we figured something out. Now, shit, did I know that they were going to accept it? I was unaware of that. And now we're actually using it. Somebody's putting it to good use. Didn't expect that, but okay, great. Does that prevent anybody from using colloidal silica in the concrete industry? Hell no. Does that stop anybody from taking my idea, what I've created, and doing something else with it? Hell no. That's what our country is all about. That's why after thousands of years, we still have new songs coming out. How is that possible? How is it possible we have new music coming out almost every day? There's only so many notes in the world. Yet somehow we combine those notes, come up with new songs in entirely different form, fashions, or another. I don't know if you watch documentaries, Seth. Do you watch documentaries?
Occasionally.
There's a documentary that I need you to watch as part of our next chat. It's a frame of reference. And if Baker's going to get upset at you because you're watching this on company time, I'll pay for your time. Okay, so you tell them to send me an invoice. No. This is going to change your flipping world, man. It's called The Furthest Voyager in Space. Changed my life. Changed my life as somebody in your line of work and my line of work. It's a documentary about the engineers, or that covers the engineers, the progenitors of the Voyager 1 and 2 spacecrafts, satellites, that did the outer planetary tour and launched in 1977. One of the best documentaries out there. And it gets into, taking aluminum and silicon and turning them into the satellites that are still sending us information from, the cold, in between space of stars. But not only that, there's a record on it. It's called the Golden Record, where one guy, I can't remember his name, Timothy Ferris, can't believe I remember his name, had the job of creating a record. I believe it was 60 minutes. Was it 45 minutes of it was sound and 15 minutes of it was songs. So he had to pick whatever the time frame was, these songs back in the 1970s that were going to represent the growth of humanity to aliens, right? They chose gold, and it's made out of gold because gold won't deteriorate through time, right? Mm-hmm. And there's songs from Chuck Berry. What we do has that impact, that it's records through time. And I've been using a lot of these analogies like Lord of the Rings. But what we do is like no other industry. We have a commodity-based product that has been building civilizations throughout time. Nobody can dispute that. Whether or not Bill Gates wants to dam cement and concrete, there's no other material that can do what we do, what concrete does, with as low as a carbon footprint. Patents, I get it. It looks like it can disrupt that flow. Well, you know what? Once in a while, the flow needs to be disrupted. And that's okay. The patent pending process is a difficult, arduous journey. And it's not easy, even if you have that deity type team that you were talking about, that some of these larger companies seem to have. The concrete industry has no way of consolidating the amount of information they need to really grasp why patents are important. That's why I wanted to do this. So I know I went on my tangent there. I kind of forgot where we started with that tangent, but yeah.
No, I think you summarized it and definitely educated me on the whole patent process and where we're at as an industry with patents and intellectual property. I honestly thought it was the other way around. I thought it's been around and was seeing the opposite of what you shared with us today. So I appreciate it.
My last point because unknowingly I covered my last 2 points. So my third and final point in that tangent, my third and final point is why everybody has been sitting through this. Right? Why have they been listening to these bobbling fucking bald heads? Excuse my language. and you've kind of said it. Why is it important for us to get it? Right? Why do we need to get it? Right? It's not do we need to get it. My father says that to me. I don't get it. I don't get it. Sometimes we don't need to get things. Sometimes, like for type 1L cements, a lot of people don't understand why we don't have type 1-2s. Doesn't matter. You have no choice. Type 1Ls are here to say type 1-2s, unless you're willing to bring it in from Asia, Turkey, Greece, it's gone. You don't need to get it. But with patents, the reason why people need to understand it is because there are there are financial implications as the ready-mix provider, as the contractor, as the engineer, if you don't abide by certain patents, if you infringe on certain patents. And that's why this person was reaching out to you, because some people are late to the game, that they've already been selling a technology that infringes on somebody's patent, and holy shit, they're getting these letters. So the industry doesn't have time to get it. There's nowhere, I don't know about Baker Construction, but the many contracts that I've looked for, there's never been a research budget or a, hey, sit down and read this paper budget for 3 or 4 hours. Fair assessment?
I'm biased on that point, but I think Baker Concrete does things a little bit different than other companies.
You're the top 1%. Baker Concrete should pay the lottery. No. Most companies, though, let's just say top 20%. Would you say that 80% of the contractors out there, and I'm including residential?
Yeah, no, they're just trying to get the work done and get paid so they can feed their families. They're not a enormous company with a lot of means. No, most concrete contractors are just trying to feed the family. Right.
They don't have the resources. What they do have is time. And everybody has toilet time. And the great thing about these handheld devices, you could look up every flipping patent in the world, global and U.S. based, on these things and read them anywhere. So I get it, but it is important for people to start learning. And hey, listen, Seth, I appreciate your time. I'm sorry you had to get that email. I know, you're one of the toughest guys I've ever met. But for other people out there who are getting these types of emails, I've left my email up there. Shoot me an email, especially if you're one of these small companies that, holy crap, we just got an email. We have 10 employees. We put 300, 500K into this the last 6 years, and now all of a sudden, shoot me an email. I've dealt with this before. I can tell you the direction to go. And if you want to save some time, the direction to go is hire the best patent attorney that you can afford. If not, if you can't afford a patent attorney, start coming up with better ideas. You came up with one really good idea, you can come up with more. And this is what my dad said to me. And there's no shame in me saying, I remember when each one of these ideas, the moment I found each one of these ideas were sown, either I did cry or I had to stop myself from crying. Right? I'm an emotional, sensitive guy. My friendship is emotional. My love is emotional. It's not a duck's back. My coach used to say I had square shoulders. When I hit something, I feel the brute force of it. I don't have a duck's back. And I remember that last time my dad said, you came up with this idea. Come up with something better. Use that. Hire that proverbial Russian to bang out their kneecaps. You can't do that anymore. But you could do it with your ideas. It's like kids in school. They can't beat up their teachers. That's not allowed. That's illegal. But they can get the maximum amount on their exams, their tests, their graded events. And that's how you beat the system. Come up with a better idea when your idea is stolen. So anyway, another tangent. Thanks for your time today, Seth. I really do appreciate it.
You came on here. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. And I'll get your contact information just like last time. Share it with everybody, and then reach out to John if you're having any questions about patents. Seems like he's been through the ringer. So let him help you out. I know at least one person that listens to this podcast will reach out. So thanks, John. Appreciate it.
No problem. You'll have a nice one.
Thank you for joining us for another Concrete Logic podcast episode. If you got some value out of this or you enjoyed it, please share it with others. And if you could take a moment and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app, I would appreciate it. We will catch you on the next episode. And now Mike Dunton's going to take us out.
That alarm always sings couple hours before the sun comes up. Open up the side, put some diesel in the lights, and wait till the trucks roll up. Yeah, this ain't how most folks live their lives, dripping in sweat, working overtime. But while they're tying their ties for their 9-to-5s, we're out here changing these skylines with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for a dollar, give thanks to the Lord above. Never make a man do something you can't prove. Hard work calls for a drink or two. Expect more, it's written in our blood. With wood, iron, and mud. From the swamps to the city, from the Lone Star heat to the woods of the Georgia pine. Good old boys and girls who ain't afraid of getting dirty for a clean time. And if you want to see the fire in a grown man's eyes beneath the hot summer sun, find the wild-eyed boys clocking days and nights, working hard to get that job done with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for a dollar, give thanks to the Lord above. ready